All right, welcome everybody to our gathering today on Nourishing Spring. And I am Martha Artemis Rogers. I am the creative director of Full Moon Acupuncture and Apothecary here in Baltimore, Maryland. And I'm super grateful to be with you all today and hopefully share maybe new information or remind you of practices that perhaps you have strayed from that will allow you to come into more harmony with the season of spring, as well as how spring is moving through your mind, body, and spirit. Um, so I am physically located, I think I said this, in Baltimore, Maryland, but obviously virtual realities allow for a lot of possibility, geographic possibility. So what I would love to begin with is for all of us to take a moment and settle. You've created this time for yourself today around the theme of nourishment. And so I hope that while you receive a lot of um, tidbits of helpful information, that overall the class, the time together is very nourishing for you. So find a comfortable seat. If you like, one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly. And we will come into a few deep breaths together. Breathing in through the nose and then softly, sweetly exhaling out through an open mouth. So taking these few moments, and maybe it's the first time today that you've had an opportunity to slow down, to tune in, and just sense and feel, check in with how you're feeling. How is the body feeling? How is the river of the mind this morning? What's happening in terms of the emotional flow within you? Just a couple more moments of settling, really allowing yourself to arrive. Before we open our eyes, taking a moment to feel your feet on the ground or perhaps your sitting bones in the chair. Being aware of the weight of your body. And as you exhale, allowing your body, your mind to soften. And then very slowly, and just begin to open the eyes again, taking in the sights and sounds of wherever you are this morning or this afternoon. So here in Baltimore, we've had quite a shift in weather, and that's very typical of spring, the back and forth. Um, and that those quick changes of back and forth, whether it's in temperature, whether it's the wind, can really impact, they do impact our body, mind, and spirit. So today we'll learn some ways to support ourselves in spring when that is the very nature of spring, energetically speaking. The nature, the energetic movement of springtime is up and out. So energy wants to move this time of year. And then you have wind, and the nature of wind is also movement. So wind is beneficial in that it kind of sweeps away or blows away the old, and it allows space for the new. And wind has the capacity to uh, to draw us in different directions. So, like during spring specifically, it's quite natural. It's quite healthy to feel drawn, blown, if you will, towards new interests, new hobbies, classes. So we'll get more into that a little later. But I share this so that, if you have been feeling scattered, if you've been experiencing interruptions in your sleep, your body's been feeling tight, as we go through the class, it will actually, I hope, it will make more sense as to why some of those symptoms are very much related to the season of spring. So if you have the opportunity, and we're a small group, I would love for you to put in the chat how you're feeling or how you've been feeling of late, just a word or a few words. I would love to see that. And I welcome you to do that now. Or if you can't type it, you could always say it out loud. Really sleepy. Okay. Thank you, Chris. Hopefully you'll learn some topsy-turvy. Yes, it's very much Sarah. It's that way. Spring is that way. It's such quick change. We're going from being in like hibernation of winter to then like bursting forth, like Wizard of Oz tornado land. Okay. Actually need less sleep, but quite hard to focus. Yes. Wanting and needing. All right. Thank you all so much. And feel free at any point during class to put a question in the chat. If I'm sort of in a flow and I don't see it, you're welcome to raise your hand. And Jade also is here. Jade is our assistant at Full Moon Acupuncture and Apothecary, so she might also interact with you via chat. So let us dive in. The first thing I want to do, or the third thing, let's rub our hands together. So let's, like in a very natural way, let's help to wake up our body and our mind and give ourselves some tending. So create that warm spark in your hands. And then we're going to take the palms and we're going to place them over the lower back. So right here, which is the realm of the kidneys. And the kidneys and the adrenals are our battery pack. Like they are responsible for all of the energy in our body. So let's just gently rub that area. Take a few more gentle breaths into that area. And then you can make like gentle fists. And with this part of your hand, you can tap up and down, just from like the mid or lower back down to the tailbone while you breathe. So we begin by nourishing the kidneys. And now, again, gently rub palms together and let's place hands over the closed eyes for 3 breaths. So in Chinese medicine, the eyes are the sensory organ for the springtime. So after a few breaths, I invite you to take your palms or rather your fingers, and comb. I can't do it because I have my headset on, but comb through your hair. Like, just give yourself a nice head massage and do this 3 or 5 times and let yourself enjoy this. So what we're doing is we're waking up the meridians that relate to the season of spring. So gallbladder runs over the head and down the neck. And now you're going to take a few fingers, start here, just below the occipital bone, and come forward to the ear. Doing that 3 or 4 times and noticing how that feels, noticing if you have tension there. And after you've done that 3 or 4 times, oops, one hand wants to do it and the other hand doesn't. So we're going to take our fingers, and I'm going to take my headset off just for a second. And you're going to bring your fingers massaging up and down around the ears 3 to 5 times. So awakening our senses, our capacity to vision, both symbolically as well as literal vision. All right. And then a couple more things we'll do before we go into any other types of learning. Similarly, we're going to start at the back of the neck. So there are several gallbladder points back there. And we're going to come down the neck. So just gentle with yourself. We'll do this 5 times. It feels so good. Breathing gently. Good. We'll take one hand and we'll just tap out over the shoulder. Doing that for a few breaths. And then we'll switch sides. So gallbladder in Chinese medicine grants us the capacity to be decisive. So as we tap here, this is a very important gallbladder point here at the highest point of the trapezius muscle. It helps to clarify our vision and to be decisive. It also helps to descend the qi, which is why this point is also used in early labor. All right, last thing we're going to do for our qi massage waking up for now is we're going to bring our hands together. Inhale. Belly is soft. Exhale. We're helping to open and stretch the diaphragm. Good. 2 more times. Okay, shake it out. We'll do a little more of that later, mid-class, to break up our learning from here and come back down to embodied learning. So again, to give us context for some of the things we may be feeling in our body, we just crossed the spring equinox, which means in Chinese medicine that we have gone from the predominantly yin season of winter. Now at the equinox, yang energy, the dynamic, the warming, the active principle ascends. So between now and summer solstice, the yang energy is growing, and that's that up and out energy. We've also entered Aries season, so it's a very fiery time. It's the first sign of the astrological year. So we have that. We also have the first full moon of spring waxing above us. So there's just a lot of energy, a lot of energy. Before we go any further, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the land that I am on. So I'm here in Baltimore City, and this land is stolen land from Piscataway peoples. And all of the buildings here in Baltimore City, my home included, was built, many of the homes, many of the properties built by stolen labor. So I think it's really important. So much of what I do and I teach, or I share rather, is about coming back to earth, coming back to the seasons and what they have to teach us and their wisdom. And so it feels really important to acknowledge this particular piece of earth, and the travesties of colonization. And at the same time, to hold that the earth is an incredibly intelligent, sage being with great capacity to renew. And at the same time, there's always this sense of remembering that all beings have limitations. So thank you. Okay, let's go into our shared screen, my friends. Let's dive right in for some good learning. We already did that. We did that. Yeah, so again, what I share today comes from my learning of the 5-element tradition of Chinese medicine, and also the Chinese philosophical body of wisdom that's known as Yang Shen. And that's literally translated as the nourishment of life. And when I first learned that phrase, I loved it so much. It's like living in a way that we nourish life, our individual life, but also the larger life. Because in that is the remembering that we are all interconnected. We are all in this great web of reciprocity. And so ancient peoples understood that very deeply. And something I've been thinking a lot about lately is how all traditional forms of medicine were and are based in prevention. Like we're based in prevention, understood that we are nature, and when we live counter to nature, that's when disharmony arises. So here we are learning ways to help support ourselves as means of prevention. So yeah, we talked about this earlier with what some of you all shared. This is certainly a time of a lot of back and forth. We might feel like we have big decisions in front of us, and yet at the same time feeling uncertain about what direction to move in. We could be feeling frustration, hopelessness, could be feeling possibility and joy. So as we move forward again, hopefully it will make sense as to why some of these symptoms really become overt or apparent in the spring. And just another note about wind, there's the positive benefits of wind, but then there's also how wind is considered a pernicious influence in Chinese medicine. So we have to be careful when we go out in the springtime. We have to wrap our necks. So the theory is that wind enters through the back of the neck, and if you catch a cold, it's the pattern is either wind cold or wind heat. So it's when wind invades the body. So wear your scarves. Okay. So just a quick, perhaps review or overview. The wuxing, or the 5 phases, become the 5 elements in Chinese medicine. And so now we are in the wood element, which corresponds to the season of spring. But in many ways, in order to talk about the wood element, in order to talk about springtime, we have to really give deference to winter, because winter is what gives birth to spring. How we have wintered, how much we have rested, how much we have preserved and protected our energy in winter is what is going to predict the potency, the vitality of our springtime. So it's always a good question to ask ourselves, without judgment, without harshness, like, did I get enough rest this winter? Did I really slow down? And it's okay, because there's nothing wrong. We're all just in various phases of our learning of how to slow down and care for ourselves. So we'll be focusing, of course, on spring and the wood element today. If you would like to learn more about any of this, about seasonal living, really attuning with the rhythms of your body and the natural world for wellness, inspiration, vitality, please join me for Renewal. So Renewal is a 28-day course on seasonal nourishment and seasonal ritual. And our spring session is opening for registration tomorrow. And it actually begins on April 9th. So more about that later. All righty. Okay. So the Chinese symbol for the wood element is the same symbol as tree. And when I first saw this, first learned this, the pictographs are very beautiful. And so what we see here, what we can see here and what it teaches us is that the vertical axis is the trunk of the tree, or the trunk of the tree, the spine of the tree, we can say. And then there is the horizontal line, and that represents the earth. So we can see that so much of the health of the tree is actually hidden, is actually beneath the surface. And that is the realm of winter, we could say. So I was just saying, it's like what we did in the darkness, in the dark season of winter, is then what is going to push through the soil, give us the fuel to push through the soil to rebirth ourselves in the spring. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to put them in the chat, or any thoughts around that, or clarifications. Okie dokie. So moving into the wood element. And I'm going to talk about energetic correspondences. And so the organ systems that relate are, the liver and the gallbladder. And the liver is yin to gallbladder being yang. As I mentioned, as we all see in nature, it is this really determined energy to push up and out. And I found a lovely image of dandelions pushing through the concrete. Like, that seed is going to find its way to come up and to express. That's the energy. That is the energy of spring. The sound is shout. So when we get really excited about something, or when we get angry, what happens? We have a shout in our voice. Anger is the emotion that is associated with the season of spring. I do like to think of it, though, more as determination or assertion, like healthy assertion of what we know is just and exact, what is good for ourselves, what is good for the whole. Anger, I think, certainly in our culture, how do I want to say it doesn't exactly have the best reputation, because I don't think we are taught how to have appropriate expressions of anger. And yet it is the most powerful emotion we have as humans to protect ourselves, to defend our young, to actually make change in the world. So the energy of assertion, when it's coming from a just place, is actually about how do we create more justice in the world? And of course, there are so many, I'll say, inappropriate and egregious displays of anger in our world. So springtime, coming back to the season, springtime calls us to rebirth ourselves, calls us to recreate ourselves. And in so doing, we might find ourselves, as I was saying earlier, like moving in a different direction, in a direction that feels more in alignment with who we are and who we are becoming. The liver and the wood element govern the sinews and the tendons. And that's very much related to the liver's role in storing the blood. So I'll say a little more about that, but the liver is like the metabolic powerhouse. Our livers do so much. There's like over 500 functions a day that the liver is responsible for. And it like directs so many different processes in our bodies. So we really want to tend to our liver and give it some much needed support and kindness. And one of the best ways we can do that is by getting in touch with our emotions and finding, I have some sort of small fly around me. One of the best ways, before we even talk about food or herbs or other lifestyle practices, in Chinese medicine, the liver is known to, or has the role of smoothing qi and blood. So the liver has the role of smoothing qi and blood throughout our whole body mind. And the concept of blood in Chinese medicine, well, certainly blood is moistening, it lubricates, when there's enough blood, our sinews, our muscles, our body is more supple. Blood in Chinese medicine also is like the animating spirit of our lives. When we have enough blood, we have that certain joie de vivre. We have that excitement about life. And when we are blood deficient or even anemic, our energy can feel so diminished, so depleted that it's hard to rise. It's hard to be excited about life and new possibilities and new beginnings. So liver is very much tied to blood in Chinese medicine. And what I was beginning to say was that, yes, blood moistens, it lubricates, it gives us suppleness, and then these other more emotional, spiritual factors. But blood is considered to actually house our emotions in Chinese medicine. So when the blood is moving smoothly, when the qi is moving smoothly, then our emotions are moving smoothly also. Okie doke. Love your liver. All right, a couple more of the energetic correspondences, and then we'll get into how do we take care of ourselves. Okay, so I've spoken a bit, I think enough about wind, how it's what happens in springtime, and wind is about movement, creating change, but too much wind, or when wind invades our bodies, it creates disharmony, dis-ease. The sensory orifice associated with spring are the eyes. So it's very much about literal vision. Any sort of eye problems in Chinese medicine always have a link back to the liver, if not a root, if not are rooted in liver disharmony, because the liver sends blood to the eyes. It's meant to nourish and lubricate the eyes. But it also has a role of nourishing our spiritual vision of like, where do we want to go in our life? What is our path? What goals do we have for ourselves? So that's also very much a function of liver. The external manifestation are tears. So, um, are you someone who goes out when you go out and it's very windy? Do your eyes tear up? I am. Um, so that's an expression of the liver, but it's also like too much, too much. Our body can't handle that of the wind, and so we are trying to like diffuse that overwhelm, and also protect the eyes. But more so, I'm talking about emotional tears here. If you are someone who cries a lot, and it's more often than not coming from feeling so frustrated, that often points to a disharmony in the liver, in the wood element. Um, and or emotional, being able to regulate your emotions, again, points to liver harmony or liver imbalance. If you have a lot of trouble regulating emotions, finding a smooth flow of your emotions. So the residue are nails. So sometimes diagnostically, as I'm meeting a patient and working with them, I'm also looking at their nails, both fingernails and toenails. What color are they? Are they thick? Are they thin? Is there fungus? And from that, that also gives some insight into what's happening with liver and gallbladder. The taste is sour, so we can think lemons, we can think sauerkraut, goji berries, and more on that soon. But the sour taste helps bring balance to the wood element. Um, and the time of day is 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. So you want to make sure, friends, that you are in bed horizontal before 11 o'clock, like night before 11 o'clock. Because according to the Chinese 24-hour body clock, those are the hours of the wood element. So the liver needs to be horizontal in order to properly cleanse and store the blood. We can also use the body clock is fascinating. And I do talk more about that in Renewal, about each of the 2-hour segments. But if you do a Google Chinese 24-hour body clock, it will give you a lot of information that you can sort of gently use diagnostically to perhaps give you some insight into which organ systems may need support. So if you are someone who wakes constantly at like 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. or 1 a.m., anytime during that wood time, it may also be pointing to an emotional imbalance, and specifically related to frustration, resentment, anger. So things to ponder. Things to ponder with kindness, and really to create an inquiry that we can then hopefully spend some more time reflecting on, and or reaching out to a practitioner for support. So springtime relates to the season of youth. So it's really a time of great possibility. Like anything is possible when we're children, right? Like anything is possible. I don't want to say always, but hopefully, children feel free in their bodies. They feel like the world is full of wonder and play, and there's a natural curiosity. So all of those are also the gifts of the springtime as we reawaken. I pretty much already shared all about this, the role of the liver and how it is responsible for smoothing and directing the flow of qi and blood. And by having that role with blood, everything to do with our emotions. Chinese clock, we looked at that. If you want to learn more and you want to attune more, I hope you join me for Renewal. I'm going to have a sip of my tea. It's chamomile, lemon balm with just the littlest hint of mint. All right. So some of the challenges that might arise for you throughout the year, or specifically in spring, that suggest, right? I want to say suggest that there is disharmony in the wood element are timidity, depression, rage. You can, one of my friends told me recently, she said it's annoying to her when an instructor or a guest teacher will read to her during class. So maybe you also feel that way, but maybe you don't mind. Check in with your wood element. So, again, there's so many ways that liver is involved with menstruation, whether it's like extreme PMS, whether it's really horrible, debilitating cramps, because the liver is responsible for moving the blood, and that includes the menstrual blood. Menopausal regulation. Oh, the diaphragm. I don't think I said this earlier, but when we did this exercise, inhale, exhale, that is to help open the diaphragm. And the diaphragm is said to be governed by the liver. So sometimes, either consciously or unconsciously, when we're going through a lot of hard emotions and maybe related to anger, frustration, rage, we can constrict the diaphragm. The diaphragm is a muscle. So in that way, it is governed by the liver. So if you are someone who tends to have diaphragmatic tightness or tension or pain, that is, again, a pointing. So anybody questions about this? Any questions for me in this moment? And I can't see. So if you do, Jade, can you let me know if anybody has a question or raises their hand? We just have a little bit more. And then we're getting to our vinegar making. So in the classics of Chinese medicine, the inner classics, specifically the Neijing, chapters 8, I don't remember exactly. Each of the officials, so in Western medicine, they're called organs, and in Chinese medicine, they're called officials or organ networks, because they encompass much more than physiology, because they have their emotional and psychospiritual roles. So the liver is like the general. So the liver, and then the gallbladder is about making decisions. So the liver comes up with the plan, right? The liver has the plan, holds the plan for one's life, it is believed. And then the gallbladder has to be making decisions that help to carry out your plan, that help to bring you more and more into alignment with your plan, with your destiny, we would even say. The belief in Chinese medicine is that each of us comes into life with a particular destiny, with particular seeds. We carry particular seeds, so to speak, in our ancestral DNA, as well as what happens at the moment of conception based on the heavens and earth and all of that. So that's another class. But again, it's like this very clear. It's like that dandelion that's like, oh, I'm coming up. I'm finding the sun. And there are obstacles. And so we have to be able to yield around the obstacles rather than collapse in the face of obstacles as we strive to grow in service of our vision or dreams, that sort of thing. So there are some other faculties related to the wood: clarity, wise judgment, foresight, and decision-making. Biological function are filling. So again, having to do with blood. Male arousal, male erection is very much kidneys and liver being able to send blood to the genitals. Female arousal also has to do with liver, but much more so with kidneys and heart. Expansion and acceleration. All right, friends, coming into the ways, so we've said many things that could be happening, could be showing us that we are out of balance, out of harmony, and now here are some possibilities. So what you want to avoid, you really want to avoid congesting the liver and the gallbladder. So there are certain foods to avoid. alcohol, spicy foods. Certainly you want to avoid rancid nuts and oils. Cannabis, and again, I'm not going to go too deep, and I'm just going to mention really quickly, it does have an affinity with the liver. And in moderation, it does help to sedate the liver, to smooth the flow of qi and blood. The problem, for lack of a better word, is that when it's used consistently, it actually creates what we might even say as a flaccid liver. Like the liver is not potent. The liver and one's capacity to vision and then take action in service of your goals withers, becomes flaccid. So be mindful. In Chinese medicine, cold foods are not better. Raw foods are not better. So spring is not a time to all of a sudden start eating a lot of raw foods for many reasons. But because of the volatility of spring, we want to really still focus on nourishment. I mean, always nourishment, but what does that nourishment look like? Still like soups and stews. But then you find places like condiments, ways to sprinkle in some cleansing, right? Whether that's putting fresh sprouts on your soups or just sprinkling sprouts over your bowl of quinoa with roasted vegetables, using the sour flavor. I made salmon the other night and grilled some asparagus, just very quick preparation for the asparagus. And then I just, squished half of a lemon over it, a little bit of sea salt and pepper, cooked it in olive oil. So still eating cooked foods, but finding ways to bring that brightness. So what we can cultivate, flexibility, so on and so forth. I want to keep moving. Begin each day with, so this is a list of things. I would say herbs to really call to you. And also food are stinging nettles. The absolute best food, medicinal food as well as herb, stinging nettles. They are so incredibly nutrient dense, chlorophyll rich. They have more calcium in them, more magnesium, they just like have more than kale, more than you could get in any vitamin really. And also your body's going to be able to absorb it much more readily. Sauteed dandelion greens, a lot of grocery stores now sell cultivated, certainly bitter greens, and dandelion being like cream of the crop, right? Sitting right next to stinging nettles. Stinging nettles, of course, you can also get it dried and make tea. Jasmine brings that, like it opens and it spreads the qi. It helps raise and move the qi in such a beautiful, delicate way. Rose also, like rose buds, rose petals, helps in a very gentle way move the qi of the liver. Dandelion root, exceptional for digestion. Burdock root, exceptional for digestion and like helping to gently cleanse the liver so it can properly make bile to share with the gallbladder to help us with our digestion, physical as well as emotional digestion. You can see some other things there. Whatever is growing right now is what your body needs. Whatever is growing in your region is what your body needs and your soul needs, your whole self. Milky oats is not growing right now, but it's exceptional medicine all year round, especially if you're feeling burnt out, like adrenal exhaustion. You just have way too much on your plate. You're not sleeping well at night. You're feeling dry. If you have, oh, Chris is here. All right, Chris, let's see. Chris, what did you say? Yeah.
I'm sorry. Is it okay if I chat in here with you like this?
Oh, hi. I'd love it.
Awesome.
I know who you are.
It's me. Hi. Um, my mom recently gave me a tincture bottle of milk thistle and said
Mm-hmm.
it's very good for you, but I have no idea how to use it. And she didn't really have anything to explain because she uses it for her dogs, for the vets.
Okay.
recommendation.
Okay.
So how would people ingest it that way, I guess?
um,
Thank you.
yeah, that's such a great question. So it's perfectly ingestible for humans. You just want to make sure like you're taking a human grade supplement. And with all tinctures, there's what is on the bottle, like take a full dropper twice a day or take 5 drops a day. So look at what's recommended. Um, and milk thistle is gentle for the liver, but I would say, if the bottle says start with 15 drops 2 times a day, just ask yourself, do I tend to be a sensitive person? I tend to be a sensitive person when it comes to herbs and medicinals and any kind of medicine, really. So I tend to just scale back a little bit, dose back, and then give myself like 3 days. Okay, feeling good, not feeling any, one way or the other. Let me increase by 5 drops. So you might try something like that, like slowly coming up to what they're recommending as a dose.
Okay, and is it generally like an oral solution or do you add it to something?
Thank you for that. Yeah, so tinctures are specifically extracted in alcohol. So usually it's like a 80 proof vodka, something like that. So you want to put it in a little bit of water or a little herbal tea, something like that. Yeah, it's too much to put on. For me, it's too much to put under my tongue. It's very burny, and I don't want
Okay.
that experience. Yeah,
Awesome.
definitely dose it in water. Yeah, thank you for the question.
Sure, thank you. Appreciate that.
Nice to hear your voice. All right, so da 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 da. All right. Back to our share. Um, I've included some grains, other foods you can use, quinoa, brown rice, millet. And I'm going to let you read this now I'm going to let you read it as I go and get my vinegar and my jar so I can show you guys this fun thing we're going to do. So we've got one more page, and this is our recap. So springtime, we just crossed the vernal equinox. And so spring is very much about finding harmony, creating harmony within ourselves. So we can ask ourselves again with kindness, does X bring harmony or does X perpetuate disharmony? And so we can think like, does this food, um, uh, I mean, I don't want to make it too large scale, but you can really take it to any, does this job, does going out with X, Y, and Z on Friday night, like I love the question because it brings us into ourselves and allows us to create and deepen our connection with the wisdom of our own bodies. And each of our bodies is so incredibly wise. And yet it's easy to become disconnected from the wisdom of our own body. Um, as the energy moves up and out, moon is waxing, Aries season, more daylight, it's very easy to all of a sudden start like taking on all kinds of new things. And just see if you can notice that and maybe resist here and there, remembering that the pictograph I showed you of the tree and how the sustainability, the growth of the tree very much is predicated on what happens in the darkness, how much we are resting. Um, Talked about cold foods are not better. Sorry, I didn't go into that in any detail, but come see me for renewal and we'll talk more about the hows and whys of avoiding or limiting, very much limiting raw and cold foods. Move your body in ways that feel good. And please go out into nature. That will always be the best medicine. a friend of mine is struggling right now. She lives in Connecticut. She just has a lot of different symptoms. And she texted me the other day and she's like, I feel horrible. I haven't been able to get off the floor today. And I'm going to go take a Bikram yoga class. And I've had a lot of conversations with her. And I just said, okay, maybe go and take that class, which you sweat a lot. And in Chinese medicine, sweat is considered a precious yin substance. And I know that my friend is extremely yin deficient. And I said, what if you just went to a park close by and went and sat at the base of a tree? Like, would you do that? So always check in with yourself. Do what feels good, so on and so forth. And please continue to find appropriate ways to channel your natural expression. Your creative expression sometimes could be known as anger or frustration. All right. Okay, so I am going to stop my share and I'm going to ask you guys if any of you can you just raise your hand if you have what you need to make the vinegar? If you followed instructions, and it's okay if you didn't. All right. If I don't see hands, Chris Chris. Chris, you're getting star student achievement. All right, I'm going to shift my angle of my camera. It's going to be a little goofy, but to make an herbal vinegar, it's actually an extract. I think I used the word infused in maybe my promotions, and that is incorrect. Infusion implies that there's been the process of heat, and we are not heating. We are doing an unheated extraction. You want to make sure you have a clean vessel. A jar is preferred, and you can sterilize it by soaking it in boiling water. You want to have your lid and a small piece of parchment paper. It's so easy to do and it's so fun. And the sour taste is what harmonizes the liver. So how right on time are we? So I have obsessions with apple cider vinegar, especially the ones that have the live SCOBY in them. The mother, as it's known. So that's like the active living being that is so good for our microbiome. So whatever vinegar you've chosen, that's great. I would recommend using an organic vinegar. And also to think about, what is the flavor of the vinegar? Because obviously that is going to impact the outcome, right? So you can use fresh plant material, like you might be foraging, and you could put some dandelion greens in it, or you could buy cultivated dandelion greens. Anything that's full of chlorophyll. Lemon balm is growing right now. I didn't mention lemon balm earlier. There's so many things I didn't mention, friends, but we'd be on for days. Lemon balm is an excellent herb for springtime also. So if you're using fresh material, you want to either cut it with a knife. I like to just break it up with my hands and then put it in the jar. You can use like a spoon or some sort of clean instrument to put in. So it's 2-to-1 ratio. So you're going to have half live plant material. I'm going to be using dried herbs this time, which is why I haven't started with them yet. And then you would fill the rest of the bottle with your vinegar, leaving a little space at the top. If any of your live herbs are sticking up, then you want to just gently use that same clean instrument to poke them down underneath of the vinegar. And then you would, okay, so I can stop there. If you are using dried herbs, you need less. You need about 2 tablespoons. So I'm using rose buds and rose petals. Why, you ask? Because rose helps to smooth the sea of the liver. And it's like one of my most favorite herbs. Every time, well, not every time I make tea, I would say 80% of the time I make tea, there has to be at least a little rose. So that's about, I'm not measuring, I'm not a measurer. But that's probably about 1 tablespoon. And that's dried rose leaf. So here you could be using dried dandelion root, dried burdock root. You could be using dried stinging nettles, chives. I mean, it's just so many things are possible. I'm going to put in another tablespoon of the rose buds. I'm going to add my vinegar. So again, with dried herbs, you need about 2 tablespoons. Just about to there. So I don't have something to submerge them other than my fingers, and I'm not going to do that because what I will do is take my piece of parchment paper, fold it, place it on top. So we use the parchment paper so that no rusting or oxidation occurs with the lid. And then we'll just put the lid on. You want to always label whatever it is that you make. So I am going to find a Sharpie, and you can also put a piece of masking tape on it so you don't have to write on the lid. If you're okay with writing on the lid, today's date is 3/21/24. Took me a minute. And you want to wait like 2 to 4 weeks. You can visit it and shake it. So the other thing you can do is give it a gentle shake and just like fill it with your love and your goodness and your intentions for spring. And then in 2 to 4 weeks, you're going to want to strain it. Strain it with cheesecloth or a very fine mesh strainer. And you can, with the herbs, you can put them in the compost. You can put them outside as an offering to the earth. And then you have this beautiful vinegar that you can use for salad dressings. You can make an oxymel with it, which is adding honey. That's a different class. You could even put a little bit in some water before you eat to help with your digestion. Like you could make your own digestive bitters and use a little. All right, so we have covered a lot of ground, my friends, a lot of ground. We were moving fast like the springtime, but I really do hope that you received some information that will help you to continue to nourish yourself, and it will inspire you to slow down, check in with the wisdom of your body, and really allow yourself to embrace your need for rest if that is what you are craving. Because I think in general, I would say 80% or more of, more, closer to 90%. Thank you, Tanya, for being here. Of the population that I see in my practice are depleted, are deficient in chi and blood. So again, we will be beginning renewal. Registration opens tomorrow for the spring session. It's going to be a wonderful class, very beautiful, and bringing in some amazing guest teachers, local herbalist, a local also herbalist and ritual officiant to speak on the importance of ritual in our daily lives and how to go about implementing meaningful ritual in our daily lives, as well as I'm having Helena Del Pesco of Larder come in and speak on how to make kraut, like how to make sauerkraut, how and why to make sauerkraut, and how it supports our microbiome. So it's going to be fun, it's going to be interactive, soulful, and nourishing. And for those of you who were on the call today, if you use the code Nourish, all caps, you will receive $30 off the cost of renewal plus And I'll send an email out recapping all of this. I know we're past time. I'm very grateful for each of you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. May it be grounding and may it be nourishing. Thanks, Jade. Thank you, everyone. Be well. I'll see you soon.